Hello, I'm Perrin Beatty, President of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, and throughout the COVID-19 crisis, I'll be holding a series of conversations designed to give you and your business the information that you need to help to manage some of the issues that you're facing in these troubled times. Now, to kick off this series, we're very fortunate to have the Honourable Mary Ng, who's the Member of Parliament for Markham Thornhill in Ontario and Minister of Small Business Export Promotion and International Trade. Minister, thank you very much for joining us. It was 3 years, as of April 3rd, that you were first elected to Parliament, and less than 2 years since you became Minister for Small Business, but you've acquired a lifetime of experience in a pretty important field during that time. Now, Statistics Canada reported that as of December 2017, there were 1,180,000 employer businesses in Canada, of which fully 1,150,000, that's 97.9%, were small businesses, and 1.9% were medium-sized. So SMEs are truly the mainstay of Canada's economy. What's your assessment as to how they're doing to manage to weather the current storm?
Well, I think that this is a difficult time for small businesses and for small and medium-sized businesses and businesses of all sizes. COVID-19 really is a crisis that we are dealing with as a country. And I think that what we have done is been listening to, working with businesses, particularly our small businesses and our medium-sized businesses, to hear what it is that they need at this particular time to weather this storm that we are all in right now. I want to say that a thank you to the businesses, because our job right now is to plank the curve. It is to help our Canadians across the country to stay safe and to stay healthy. And to those businesses that have, that have seen their businesses decline considerably in revenue, or who've had to close down, or who've had to lay off staff, I want to thank you, because you are in all of our communities across the country. And I'm hoping that through this discussion and through the measures that we've put in place, and frankly, through the good partnership and collaboration that we are having with the National Chamber and through many of the chamber networks across the country, we're able to share that very valuable information and have a two-way exchange so that we can work together to weather COVID-19.
You've announced, you and your colleagues have announced the most massive program to support business that I've seen in my lifetime, certainly. Perhaps could you set out some of the elements of that plan, and then let's take a look at it, how people would apply, and what sort of timeframes we're looking at.
Absolutely. I heard overwhelmingly from businesses that they really needed a number of things. They needed operating funds and cash flow to weather through this period of uncertainty. Businesses have told me that they also needed help to keep their employees, because we know how critical for all of our organizations are. The backbone are our people, and they needed some help to keep their employees. And then they also said to us, help us keep our costs low. We submit payments to you like the GST or the HST or customs duties. Can you help us do something about that? So our measures for small businesses, for all businesses really, are in those three categories. And again, it was listening to businesses and listening to the chambers and working together that these measures have come out. And you're right, they are in significant dollars. So I'll deal with the first one, helping businesses with the operating funds and the cash flow that they need to weather through this period. We have unlocked billions of dollars into the lending system, into the Canadian financial institution, into the credit union system across the country, so that small businesses, as an example, can get access to a $40,000 loan, and $10,000 of that, or up to $10,000, it will be 25%, is forgiven if you're able to pay that loan by December of 2022. So there's ample time for businesses to be able to not only get access to repay it back, and that will help with operating funds, that will help with cash flow, that will help you pay the bills. And for other businesses of larger sizes, there are guarantee loans that we have put out that are of larger size, so up to $6.25 million for businesses that need a larger amount of funds. And that, just to give you a sense of what the Treasury has put into this, this is about $300 billion worth of lending that we have unlocked the federal government into the financial system so that banks and credit unions and financial institutions can provide that kind of lending to our businesses across the country. So that's number one, to dealing with operating funds and with cash flow. The second thing is helping our businesses keep their employees, keeping them employed. This is about saving jobs and helping our businesses stay as much intact as possible during this period. I think everyone can look around in our communities, in our neighborhoods, about those businesses that have had to close or have seen significant revenue decline in order to plank the curve and help people with self-isolation and physical distancing. And here we have introduced a 75% wage subsidy. So for employers and for businesses, this means the government of Canada will pay 75% of that wage, up to $58,700. This is going to make a considerable difference. And we are encouraging employers to pay the other 25% where they can. We know that the road to recovery is going to be made better and that we have a greater ability to do that. Businesses do, if their employees and their businesses are intact. And then the third thing is keeping costs low. So deferring GST and HST, deferring the filing of income taxes and paying that in September, the end of October, or the end of August, early September, and just making sure that we are keeping those costs low for businesses. And these suite of measures are comprehensive so that businesses can make the decisions. They have a suite of measures, and they can then use this to make the decisions about how to keep their business and move their business forward. And then I think the last point I would make is we also heard from a lot of people who are the entrepreneur or who is the contract, a person who just takes on contract work and who would be lost in this. They've seen their income literally go to nothing. And there we've introduced an emergency measures benefit so that those people can get up to $2,000 a month during this period to weather them through, to help them get by.
Can you, obviously it's a very comprehensive suite of programs, and again, the most extensive I've seen in my lifetime directed at business as a means of ensuring that when we all emerge from our homes and we want to restart the economy, that there's something there once again to be able to do it. Can you talk a bit about eligibility? The wage subsidy program is obviously the most significant element for most businesses. Who is eligible for that?
So for this, the eligibility, it applies to any size of business, small, medium, or large. You are eligible. There's also no cap on the number of employees. So this does cover employers of all sizes and for all of their employees. The eligibility we have put in is a loss of revenue of 30% from this year compared to 2019 in that same period. And the reason we did this is that we know that despite this very challenging and difficult period of COVID-19, some businesses are not seeing a decrease in revenue, while others have seen a dramatic decrease in revenue. And we know that those employers are facing decisions. Some have already made those decisions. Others are facing decisions on how to keep their staff. So this is all about being able to keep those jobs and keep those businesses. So the 30% reduction in revenue is the eligibility. And we're going to go as fast as we can to make this available to Canadian businesses. You would be able to sign up using a site that you're already very familiar with as employers and businesses through the Canada Revenue Agency. In the My Business, every business has a My Business, My Business link. So having businesses go there, we estimate that it's 3 to 6 weeks before we get this up, and 6 weeks being the outside sort of worst case scenario. We are working as hard as we can. Our officials are, everyone is. We know how urgent the situation is, and I know the kind of decisions and the urgency of the decisions that employers need to make right now. and we're going as fast as we can. But those are the eligibilities and how to get access to the program.
Thank you. You've put your finger on obviously what the key concern here is, that for many small businesses, they've been shut down for 3 weeks and they simply don't have the cash reserves. What sort of confidence do you have about the speed with which the money can actually get into their hands? Because certainly what we hear from employers across the country is, in many cases, it is critical right now.
Absolutely. And I understand that urgency. I hear that urgency. I'm working, this is a whole of government approach. So whether it is the finance minister that put this together to make sure that that this enormous amount of support is going out there into our businesses, to my colleague, Minister Lebutier, who leads the Canada Revenue Agency. We are all working on this, and my team, and we are in our, sort of in government, redeploying people so that we have the adequacy as best as we can of people working on this. We understand the urgency of it, so we're going to go as fast as we can. It's 3 to 6 weeks, and I would say to businesses looking for that support, the cash flow and the operating like the operating support, the operating funds to pay for their monthly bills. It's to pay for things like rent, for salaries as well, for insurance, and a whole range of operating expenses that you have. I would encourage you to go to your financial institution. We have done a lot of work negotiating not negotiating, but working with the financial institutions, the banks and the credit unions across the country, so that they understand what we're trying to do here is to make sure that there is that lending support available to our businesses of all sizes. So I had a really wonderful conversation with a bank manager who said, look, I've been in this business for 30 years. I have seen Trevor and Sarah's business 25 years ago when I gave them their first loan. That business has grown into a multi-million-dollar business, and they've gone through some hard times over the years. This is very, very difficult, but that bank manager is quite willing to also work with Sarah and Trevor again during this present situation to help them weather through this difficult period, so that again they can pay their bills and keep their employees, so that when we're on that road to recovery, we have our businesses with the capabilities to be able to go on to that recovery and to and to get us strong again.
If businesses have questions about their eligibility, where do they go to get information about that?
Well, what we did was we created, we know that there's so much information that has gone out. And one of the places I would go is to Canada.ca COVID-19. There's actually a specific place, an icon in there, very specific for businesses. So the range of supports and information that businesses would typically look to, you could certainly go there. But I would also encourage people to go to the Chamber. You have done an enormous job. I want to give a huge thank you to the Chamber and to the network of businesses that you have pulled together. We are, of course, collaborating through the Canadian Business Resilience Network, and this is really put together in an effort to connect businesses of many sizes and to make sure that information gets out to the businesses. And more importantly, it's also a really important vehicle for us to also get input from the chambers, because you're talking directly to businesses. So you can play a really important role across the country, as you already are, to making sure that the businesses are getting the information that they need, and then to dialogue with us about what it is that we need to improve upon.
And we're glad to do that, and we appreciate the partnership with the Government of Canada, and particularly your efforts in that. The programs you've described are of general application across the board. The government has also recognized the fact that in specific sectors, there are special challenges that the businesses face. Is the government also, an example of that would be tourism, for example, which has fallen off dramatically, or travel, the hospitality sector. Is the government looking at designing programs that are tailored to the specific needs of specific sectors?
We're very much talking to the specific sectors. My colleague, Minister Jolie, who is also the Minister of Tourism, has been having many conversations and understanding the urgency and the needs of that sector as an example. But yes, to answer your question, we are absolutely talking to the many sectors as they are to us. And what we try to do here is make sure that we put programs and supports out that will get to the widest range of people. You'll remember, and it really wasn't that long ago, but you know, the Canada Emergency Measures Benefit, that came out because we just knew we needed to get it out to as many people as possible, because Canadians are doing some extraordinary things right now to plank that curve. And we needed to make sure that those Canadians are supported and that they're not thinking about food on the table or rent to pay and the roof over your head in an effort to do your part in planking this curve. So I thank Canadians for doing that. So our initial measures were benefits like the Canada Child Benefit, that where we increased it so that working families could do what they need to do right now during COVID-19. And then of course the various measures that we put out for small businesses, but businesses of all sizes. And yes, we are also talking the sectors. I want people to know, if there's one thing that they take away from this conversation with me, that they need to know that this government is unwavering in our support, in our work, and in our work together, so that we can support Canadians and businesses through this crisis.
Can we talk for a minute about the other half of your portfolio? In addition to having a full-time job, being responsible for small businesses, you also have responsibility for trade, for export promotion and international trade. And one of the elements of the government's package was increased support through Export Development Canada. Could you explain what the government has in mind in that area?
Absolutely. So many of our Canadian businesses operate by exporting into other countries, and largely the United States, and making sure that those businesses are supported through COVID-19 was really important. Export Development Canada, of course, provides a range of supports, from credit insurance and financial support. So the package that we put out of loan guarantees also apply to those businesses that are doing exporting work. And as the trade minister for the country, I just participated in a meeting of the G20 trade ministers, where we concluded the meeting by agreeing and issuing a statement that we have to keep supply chains open. We have to keep supply chains open, particularly for agricultural products, for critical health supplies and medical equipment. And during this time of this pandemic globally, we need to continue those efforts to keep supply chains open, because we are a very connected trade world. And many people have heard me talk about where we are in Canada. Canada has access to 62% of the world's economy. We have trade agreements with significant parts of the world, whether it is in North America through Mexico and the United States, or with the European Union through CETA, or a significant part of the Asia Pacific through CPTPP, and ensuring that those supply chains continue and is just as important, and that's what we're doing.
Can I ask about that? You are responsible for the Trade Commissioner Service.
Yes.
With much of the world on lockdown, are they still functioning, and how can they help business at this point?
They are still very much supporting businesses. Of course, we also have a number of Canadians who are across the world who needed help and assistance returning to Canada, and our consular services all around the world, where the Trade Commissioner services work, and many of the embassies around the world have been helping with that consular effort, but they are also helping our Canadian businesses, and they continue to do this work. They're doing it a little differently, just as we are now. We are working remotely, and we're using different tools to do that work. But I can assure our businesses that that service, the service of the Canadian Trade Commission, continues to be there for them, and that they should continue to draw on them.
Let's turn to one final area, and that's the business of government itself. You obviously, just as private sector businesses are forced to operate under extremely difficult circumstances, the government of Canada is as well. Can you tell us how things have changed for you? Are you working remotely? What about your own staff? Do you still have cabinet meetings in person? How do you, with all of the government involved in this, how do you coordinate the efforts of government and ensure coherence in what you're doing?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So I am working remotely. I do get to Ottawa from time to time when it's necessary, because I'm respecting what we all need to do, which is the physical distancing. We have a cabinet committee chaired by the Deputy Prime Minister, specifically on COVID-19, which I sit on along with a number of other ministers. And this is the cabinet committee that is looking at leading and managing the entire effort with respect to our response to COVID-19. Of course, cabinet meetings are still continuing to take place, and we are doing that. Remotely. Some people who are in Ottawa, some cabinet ministers who are in Ottawa, are taking those meetings there. And I have certainly attended a cabinet meetings from Ottawa, and the physical distancing within the cabinet room is absolutely respected. And we are using the different tools that are available to us so that we are able to continue to perform and serve Canadians, to communicate to Canadians. You see the Prime Minister every day does a press conference, and he speaks to Canadians every day at 11:15, and the ministers do as well. And within the government, we have redeployed capabilities so that where the work has to be to make sure that we are serving Canadians, that's happening. So in procurement right now, and we are working with Canadian companies, incredible Canadian companies, who are going to be able to have a made in Canada solution for many of the equipment, whether it's masks or ventilators, that we need. So we have Minister Baines and Minister Anand have got separate portals for that, and we're making sure that within our government system, that resources are being deployed to be able to respond to the needs of Canadians during this time. Minister Francois Philippe Champagne, as I said, in the effort of bringing Canadians home, there is a large consular service that is taking place. So, I have one of my team that is working over there right now, and we're all just doing our level best to make sure that we are using our resources and making sure that we've got them in places where we need them to serve Canadians. EI is another place, for example, where we have redeployed, and there are staff that are now working there rather than where they would have been as recent as a couple of weeks ago, just to make sure that we are responding to Canadians and serving Canadians and getting as fast as we can, getting our measures out to Canadians as fast as we can, and to keep working on new ones as the situation evolves.
Minister, thank you. Even before this crisis, you were one of the most energetic ministers in cabinet, with a portfolio that takes you into every single community in the country, because small businesses are everywhere, and your passion for business and your commitment to it was evident. But never has it been more in demand than it is right now. And we're very grateful to you for the efforts you and your colleagues are making on behalf of Canadian business, and very grateful to you for joining us today.
Well, thank you so much, Perrin. And again, I want to thank you as well for your immense leadership to the Chamber, and to all of your colleagues who are doing extraordinary work across the country. I'm so thrilled that we are able to collaborate and to partner, and let's keep doing this, because this two-way exchange really serves us well, and it serves, most importantly, it serves Canadian businesses well, and it's going to take all of us. And maybe I'll end on this note. What's really been incredible is seeing the resilience of Canadians. To see where people are stepping up is really what Canada is all about. Whether it's that young person that is going to get the groceries for their elderly neighbor, or those businesses that are retooling themselves so that they can provide and make the equipment and the supplies that we are looking for here in the country. Or restaurants, even though they're closed, are offering free meals to the frontline healthcare worker. I'm hearing stories like this because it really does demonstrate that that in this, that Canadian resilience and that Canadian spirit is very much there, and we're just gonna need to work together and come out of this. So thank you.
And we will. And we're all in it together. Thank you and good luck.
Thank you. You too. All the best.